Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to impartially unpack a really fascinating and, honestly, highly provocative philosophical lecture. The source material makes this massive, sweeping argument that the controversies we're seeing right now in sports, government, and society, they aren't just isolated incidents. They're actually symptoms of a looming global systemic failure. It's a pretty bold claim for sure, so let's break down exactly how the speaker connects the dots.
Okay, let's dive right in. The source lecture starts off by asking this exact striking question. Seriously, think about it for a second. What on earth ties all of these massive, seemingly unrelated institutions together? Well, the speaker points out that right now, not a single one of these systems is functioning without massive, fundamental controversies. There's this undeniable sense of crisis everywhere you look, and the lecture argues that this is absolutely not a coincidence. To kick things off, the lecture zeroes in on the recent Korea Football Association controversy. The speaker argues that initiatives like international sports, which were originally created to promote peace, unity, and sportsmanship, have degraded completely into self-serving cartels. And according to the source, when an organization reaches the stage, it no longer produces any of its intended positive outcomes. Instead, it generates what the speaker literally calls 100% side effects. Section 1. The people made everything. The origin of modern organizations. So, to understand exactly how we arrived at this state of corruption, the lecture traces a chronological path. The core theory here is that there's a specific three-step evolutionary cycle that applies universally across our society. Step 1. Everyday citizens unite their power, their energy, and their resources to build an organization from the ground up. Step 2. Fueled by the people, that organization grows massively in size and influence. But then, we hit step 3. As the organization peaks, internal greed takes over. Factions start to form, the whole original purpose is completely forgotten, and a self-serving cartel is born. Which brings us to Section 2, How Organizations Corrupted, the Present State of the System. Looking at the present state of things, the speaker zooms out from the sports world and applies this exact same critique to the absolute core pillars of our society, claiming they've all hit a corrupt dead end. The lecture meticulously outlines how our major institutions have completely abandoned their mandates. Just look at the government, right? Its purpose is to govern the nation, but the side effect we actually experience is endless internal political party fighting. Corporations were built for economic growth, but they're now failing to fundamentally innovate. And religion, meant to offer righteous guidance, is heavily criticized for cultivating blind faith rather than teaching people the right actions to take in society. You've probably noticed this in your own day-to-day life. Across the board, the focus has completely shifted from serving the public to organizations just expanding their own internal influence. Now, maintaining an entirely impartial view of this philosophical critique, we really have to note the speaker's highly controversial assertion regarding politics. The lecture states, very bluntly, that modern political party organizations should be completely abolished. Why? Well, because in the speaker's view, these parties prioritize organizational fighting and power grabbing over actual governance. Basically, they've become the ultimate cartels, and according to the source, they are straight up ruining the world. So you might be wondering, why haven't we fixed this yet? The source highlights a famous anecdote by former Samsung chairman Lee Kun-hee, who famously told his executives to change everything except your wife. The speaker points out that while the urgent need for change has been recognized for years and years by top leaders, they've completely failed to offer a real fundamental paradigm shift. People know the system is broken, but because nobody knows exactly how to replace it, we just keep dragging this broken system forward. This leads into Section 3, Zombies Draining Our Energy, the Parasitic Nature of Cartels. See, as these cartels completely forget their original purpose, they take on a truly parasitic nature. In this philosophical framework, modern institutions are actually categorized as zombies or vampires. They're these massive, bloated entities that just don't produce value anymore. Instead, they survive solely by extracting. They literally drain the energy, the resources, and the very pockets of the citizens who originally built them. The people are left completely exhausted, basically just functioning as a life support system for an overgrown organization. And that brings us to Section 4, New Order Beyond Blind Faith, the Crossroads of the Future. With all these systems failing and draining the populace, the source lecture turns to the ultimate fate of humanity, presenting us with a very stark binary choice. The speaker argues that humanity is currently standing at a massive crossroads. On the left, we can cling to the old, decaying cartel systems. Or, on the right, we can find a completely new paradigm to restore global order. There's no middle ground here. The lecture stresses that we either discover this new right path or we're going to face some truly catastrophic consequences.
Because if society continues on its current path of internal conflict and cartel greed, the lecture warns of a devastating outcome, a third world war. And this wouldn't just be your standard political conflict. The speaker claims that World War I and World War II were merely historical organizing phases that reset 30% of the global population. A third world war, driven by the outdated logic of force, would be far more destructive. The lecture even claims it would trigger a literal shifting of the Earth's crust. It's a really dire warning of unprecedented damage to humanity if we don't change course.
Now, faced with this kind of societal crisis, you'd think people would be desperately looking for innovative solutions, right? But the speaker strongly critiques the modern response. The lecture argues that highly educated citizens, totally overwhelmed by these failing systems, are actually regressing. They're returning to outdated, blind faith, what the speaker calls believe-in-me religions. Instead of actively finding the right solutions to fix our society, people are seeking salvation in physical statues, stones, and structures. They're just sitting around waiting to be saved, rather than doing the hard work of creating a new paradigm. As we wrap up our explanation of this fascinating source material, we want to leave you with the lecture's ultimate provocation. If our sports organizations, our governments, corporations, and religious institutions have all devolved into self-serving cartels, how will we break the cycle? How do we stop feeding these zombie organizations and establish a truly new, functioning global order before it's literally too late? It's a heavy question for sure, but one the speaker insists we must answer right now. Thank you for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.